Hello, everyone. My name is Brent. I'm the host for Canadians with Disabilities and their Allies. And today I am really excited to actually bring on two wonderful people. The CEO for High Energy FM, and wow, I mean, it's great. And also the amazing Starrocks, yeah, DJ Starrocks. That's right, Akil. He's known as DJ Starrocks. So welcome, gentlemen, and welcome to my show.
Thanks for having us. I must say, it's a pleasure to be here. The last time I was here is I was just tuning to you or listening to you guys interview. Didn't expect us to actually be here with you guys.
Wow, this is awesome. This is awesome having you both on. The tag team from High Energy FM.
Trinidad.
Trinidad. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few. They call it skip the rock across the pond, right? You're definitely way across the pond from where I am.
Oh yeah.
But it's nice to the whole vision behind Brent's show. I'm going to speak for Brent. Was to bring people together, and I mean, disability issues is a global issue. It's not just in Canada. It's a problem. It's not just in the UK. It's not just in the States. It's everywhere, including Trinidad. So I know when Brent envisioned the show, it did quickly become kind of a global push, a global realization that things have to change.
Exactly, and there's no certain barrier of saying, well, this is only in this jurisdiction or it's that jurisdiction. Exactly, you're right, Neil. It's global. It's a global issue, and as when I first launched the show, gentlemen, my first vision was was right on Canadians with disabilities and their allies, but I quickly realized that by growing further outward and bringing people in for the common purpose of bringing people in with lived experience, bringing everybody together and collaborate with allies, right? Like yourselves, your allies to Canadians with disabilities, and also within Trinidad and also through all the other countries around the world. We all have our own ways of bringing things together to make things a better place, a better world. Well, at least we're going to try to, right? I mean, and that's what it's all about. It's bringing ideas and lived experience, and that's what the show is all about. It's all about lived experience.
Well, that sounds all good, because one of the main push behind High Energy FM is to be a voice for the disabled in the Caribbean and its region, and as well as around the world, because we all need each other. We all need to learn from each other. And the idea started, like I said, from that, to bring the Caribbean, the region, and the rest of the world together. So we could teach y'all could teach us, help us to, try and see if we could fix this problem from the top come down.
And it's I like your slogan that you use on High Energy FM. What is it? A place that you can you be yourself.
Be yourself.
A good place to be yourself. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. And every time I see that, it really hammers home to me, because it's about lived experience, about a place you can be yourself, and it's about lived experience. It's about talking about yourself, and not with what political leaders may want you to be what they want you to be, because they don't live the person's life, right? Only that person lives their life, and they can be themselves. And it's all about what they want to talk about and bring forward about what affects their life on decision makings, and we'll get into a lot about that in the show too, about different decisions that are made that can affect a person's life about housing, income insecurity, you name it, accessibility. So yeah, we'll pile into all that stuff. I'm going to hand them over to Neil there, and maybe.
I was just going to say, Brent, you're exactly right. I mean, a good place to be yourself is a motto that I love too, but it's a motto that's so countercultural for a lot of politicians, right? Because we've said before that in the eyes of a lot of politicians, or the powers that be, they look at I mean, we've had discussions before where what's the first thing that you talk about when you meet somebody for the first time? It's like, what do you do for a living? What kind of job do you do, right? There's such a huge value on jobs and work, and yet, of course, a lot of people with disabilities can't work. I mean, this is just one example, right? But I'm just trying to say that so much of our identity is tied to, for example, work. And so basically, if you don't work, the politicians and others, not just politicians, I'm not just picking on politicians, but a lot of people will say that, if you don't work, you don't have value. You don't have value as a person, right? So when I hear that good place to be yourself, it's so counter to what the people in the disability community hear. It's like, well, you're not listening to us because you don't value us because we don't have jobs, and you don't value us as taxpayers. I mean, we still pay tax, but I guess we're not paying enough tax to them because we're not some of us aren't working as much as others would like. But I mean, so again, like I really embrace that motto, because it's total countercultural to what we're fed a lot by the politicians, saying, well, just get a job and actually be important. You're not important. You don't have value if you don't have a job.
Right. It comes down to them looking at a person's worthiness. Oh, well, you don't have a job, or you don't have the right income. Well, then you're not part of society, or you're not contributing into society. That's wrong, right? It's because they're still taxpayers, regardless. I mean, they pay their taxes. They go to the grocery store. They pay their tax. If they drive, well, they pay the tax on the fuel. They pay their hydro. Well, there's a tax levy in there too. Well, there's a transit levy. There's all sorts of ways of them getting taxes. So, is my view, and I'm going to get kind of some comments from the CEO and Akil on this, but you give people enough resources, and that comes down to give them the right kind of housing that best suits their needs, accessible housing. You give them the right kind of the amount of income that they need to survive in today's society with the high inflation that's global. It's going around globally now. And I know in Canada we have a 40-year high inflation. It's that inflation's coming down. So they say, the critics say this morning, but the cost of living has not come down, right? So you give people enough money, and they're going to put that money back into the community that they live in. Maybe they want to go visit a friend, family. Maybe they want to travel. God forbid if you want to travel somewhere. But my philosophy on that is it's more toward like a basic income model going forward. But that's a way down the road, right? In the meantime, you need to really give people the main structure what they need now, so they can blossom and maybe look out for themselves. Maybe they want to do a small business. They want to work for themselves, or whatever it may be. Maybe, I mean, it's endless. So, gentlemen, I want your view on that, on if giving people the right resources, how, in your view, do you see how that would maybe benefit people?
For me, I believe it would be a start, because here in Trinidad and Tobago, what we get cannot even support none of us. Just give me 1 minute.
Sure.
Yeah, and I know another big word for me is autonomy. You know, that's something that's not talked about enough. You know, is that, you know, we don't necessarily just need money. I mean, money's good, but it's bigger than that. It's just
Oh, huge.
it's autonomy. It's the freedom to be your full person. You know.
Sorry about that. I had a
Yeah.
very loud noise of a truck passing. Yes, as I was saying, it's not enough. We have, like, they offered food card to help with our grocery bill, but that is how we say here in Trinidad, such a waste of time, because we have what is called a disability grant, and if you have a disability grant, you can't get a food card because they say you're already getting enough money to survive.
Oh,
But
wow.
if basically we are getting 2,000 TT a month, and I'm paying a rent of 1,500 a month, what's going to happen to me outside of that? How am I traveling? How am I moving about? How am I going for groceries, paying my bills? So you see, they need to somehow re-evaluate how to calculate how much they assume we need, because their pocket fatter than us. They getting raise in pay. We're not getting nothing.
And if there is to raise it, it won't be raised by much anyway.
No, about $200 a year.
Right. Exactly. It's a income distribution that's kind of mismanaged. It's not equalized. And it comes back with what Neil mentioned about autonomy, like giving people the freedom of making decisions and choices for themselves, and also then tying that income in and having that freedom of choice of what's best for themselves, of being able to put a roof over your head, right? Having the right amount of income, making sure it's accessible, like accessible housing, and being able to just move freely amongst with society, because we're just people. I mean, there's nothing different. You know, people with disabilities, they have disabilities. It's no fault of their own. They're born with the disability, or they develop more disabilities as they become older. As we get older, we get more disabilities, and people should not be scrutinized because you're less in society, because you have a disability. I mean, yeah, I mean, nothing against politicians who are watching this, like, but you know, the ones that are decision makers, right? You just live the life of a person with disability. Like, they're protected financially because they're elected officials, right? Now, but just, you know, I mean, the ones who are watching this now, like, just take a step back for a minute and just put yourself in the life of a person with a disability around the world. Just imagine living their life. Like, you know, you can't really imagine because you're not them, right? So you need to listen and like listen to what people are saying. Like, they have lived experience. They know what's best for themselves. And I think the policies, I mean, I wanted your view, Akil, on that, and the CEO of Fighter GFM. Like, I think the system. Well, I mean, the system is broken around the world. I mean, it's just, but it needs to be fixed. And what kind of model do you think that we would need to kind of work with that?
For me, the model that they need to somehow get this right.
Yeah.
None of them that is sitting in parliament are disabled. So nobody cannot talk for me. You can't talk for the blind, you can't talk for the physically disabled. You could only assume. Nobody sits down with us and says, what could we do to make things better? I remember I lived in Scotland for a few years, and I would like to share these stories with Akil.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Say, when you are disabled and you go for housing, they give you a form, you fill it out, you carry it back to your health center, they sign it. And once that health center signs that form, You move from the bottom of the list to the top of the list. So immediately they put you in a housing scheme, for want of a better word. Here, they don't do that. When you apply for housing, you are like anybody else. So imagine we who are disabled competing with the rest of the country. So where would we always remain? To the bottom of the barrel. Nobody is not going to say, let's take all these disabled people, put them in a category, and for each housing area, we'll give so much X amount of units. No, it's not like that. So if they don't talk to us, they would never know, and they will never get it right.
Well, here Brent is known as the 375 shelter guy, and you can give some background detail on the 375 to David and Akil.
Definitely. So in the province of British Columbia, Canada, David and Akil, and just for the listeners who are watching this live, historically, the government of British Columbia has always kept they call it the shelter rate. Now, I just, that word shelter just drives me batty, because I always relate it to like a kennel, like a shelter, it's like a housing people in a unique way, where it comes to it's the worst case scenario. It's like you put a dog in a shelter or an animal in a shelter because keep them warm. Well, why don't they just call it housing? You know what I mean? Here's your housing allowance.
God forbid call it a house.
And I know around the world they call the word house. They call a lot of things shelter, right? You got bus stops. Oh, there's the shelter, right? So I just say the awning. But anyway, so that was just kind of a funny moment there. But to be serious though, it dates back to when I did some research. I do a lot of research on this. Some people say, well, what were the rates way back when? I said, well, so this dated back to 1989. This is as far back as I can go by doing some research, and it was at $225. And in 1992, it went to $275 a month. And then from that point on, from 1992 to 2007, April 1st, 2007, it's now at $375. So there was a huge gap between February of 1992 to April 1st, 2007. That was like 15 years. We've now surpassed that till now. It's still stuck. So we're at 15 years, 10 months right now. And every month goes by, David and Akil, I post out, just to remind the politicians, like, hey, each month ticks up and then it ticks into another year. And it's still stuck at that. So the little bit of a background for people who are watching it, and just for your two of you gentlemen to kind of get a background on how that 375 equation works, is if you don't have a fixed address, you do not get that $375, right? They'll take it away. So if you're couch surfing, or you're maybe somebody's renting out their condominium or their house, or their house, or anywhere where they're staying, and it's only temporary. So if you're there maybe 6 months, one address, 6 months for another address, it's not a permanent address. So the government says it's not a permanent fixed address. You don't have a lease agreement. You do not get that. So now it comes off your total check of $1,358.50. Take away $375. You cannot find housing. So now if you're stuck now.
Wow.
So yeah, they'll take that away. So you're actually worse off. They based on SROs. They're single room occupancies. That's how it all, once upon a time, that's how that rate really came into play. I'm advocating for them to get rid of that and call it just a general supplement, because it's like a two-tier. They got support, they got shelter.
And the SROs are deplorable.
They're deplorable. They are deplorable.
Like they're subhuman conditions.
even
a lot of those places.
Yeah, like the mayor of Vancouver, they had a lot of them were they were so decrepit, like they were ready to fall down. And we had a major heat wave last summer, before they had a municipal election. The mayor at the time went in, and he was in there not even 5 minutes. He had to leave. Like, it was so deplorable, it was so hot. He says, I don't know how people can actually even live in these things.
Well, so, and we did have a lot of deaths, actually, right? I mean, I don't know how many deaths there was, but there was quite a few.
Way too many. Yeah. And they need to put people in the housing. And the way I look at it is give people enough money for the housing. They can choose where they need to live. And they don't have to worry about losing that threshold amount, just one size, one amount. They can make the decisions that they need to make for themselves, like autonomy. That's exactly it. So, yeah, so I just want to give people and yourselves a little background on how that works. I believe there's only 2 provinces in Canada that actually do that, Ontario and British Columbia. Yeah.
The others just do a one lump sum?
They do one lump sum. However, just recently, one of our allies recently told me that Alberta's starting to do that too. Oh. So it comes down to policymakers who make that decision, right? The way I look at it, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So in this case, it is broken. It needs to be fixed. And it's been broken for way too many decades. We need to modernize things and listen to people with lived experience and look at what their needs are. And I remember, Neil, we had a former politician on, and he was actually in charge of the Ministry of Disabled in British Columbia. And there was things that he wanted to change, but the system wouldn't let him change it, right? And it's unfortunate. And that's the thing, right? They get to a point where they're awesome advocates, right? But it's the system that won't let them change. So anyone says, well, I'm not going to vote for that party. I'm not going to vote for that party. It's not the party. It's the system. The system needs to change. So they all need to get together and figure out what the problem is and actually fix it.
We were talking about that the other day too. It seems like it seems to me that there's this ghost in the machine that a lot of the legislation is driven by old ghosts from, that are long since dead, that are somehow pulling the strings behind the scenes of saying, this is like 200-year-old policy, but keep it the way it is, even though it sucks, keep it. Yeah, because
they just stuff off, right? They just kind of. Yeah.
So you have all these, these ghosts in the machine, like I said, that are puppeteering the legislation still, and I mean, we could talk about the clawbacks and stuff too, and how perverse that is, but it's all related, where it's like, well, it's no skin off our nose, that doesn't affect us. And I mean, I know you always say that anybody can be disabled at any time. That's one of your favorite taglines or catchphrases, and it's true. It is. But a lot of people in power, they don't see that. They don't think, well, like I said, it doesn't affect me, but maybe one day it will, And
well, yeah, it will, and it will, and it does. It does, but they're financially taken care of, right? So when it does affect them, they don't have the they may or may not have that same impact for their health wise, where somebody who's on income assistance, who are not able to basically provide for themselves financially. So now they're worse off because they're not getting all the nutritions that they need, like all the proper food, right? So you get them, that becomes a food insecurity issue too, right? And so, a lot of them will say, oh, go to the food bank. So we don't have to raise your supported portion. Well, or no, we need to put it to your rent portion. Well, does it really matter? You pay market rent. Just give them enough money for their rent, and give them the autonomy that they deserve and that their rights are. So, gentlemen, I want to ask you, how is it in your neck of the woods? What's happening there for the disabled?
You mentioned. I'm just sorry to interrupt, Brent, but you mentioned things about food stamps. So
yes.
is it in Trinidad, is it large? Is there lots of like food banks? Is that drives a lot of the people that are the kind of the have-nots? Is there a lot of food banks that kind of step in and support, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's good.
I know. Akil could support me with this. We don't have no such thing as food bank.
Yep.
Like I said, they issue food card, like a little credit card when you go to the grocery, you use it with enough money on it, and that's the beginning and end of anything food. But if your income, which is like I said, the disability grant that they give, you cannot get that food card because they say you're already getting enough money to do what you want. But if cost of living is going up, and as you guys say, 15 years pass and nothing raised, it's almost 8 years and they have not raised anything here.
Wow.
Nothing. And we have no such thing as food banks or anything like that. We just have to survive on that
on what we have.
$1,000.
Yeah.
And whatever way. And if you are caught working, it's taken away from you.
It's taken away, yep.
Wow.
So we have more disability in politics than in the people. So the system does not work for us.
So
cannot work for us.
It means to say that, you know, there's our money, you know, your home collect that, you know. I mean, if you work, then it's going to be taken away from you. But it's our money, so you home, and that's what we're giving you to live on. So that's how you have to live.
And that's how they look at us as disabled people. All you're disabled, stay home.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
Birdie says, we got a comment from Birdie, and she says that the Trinidad's food card is similar to SNAP in the USA.
right.
Okay, right
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like they punish a person for being disabled, and it's almost like it's like in Canada here. It's like they claw back. It's like they claw back, and I'll get Neil to talk about some of these clawback stuff that's going on. I mean, you're getting. I mean, I'll touch base on that part where, I mean, you get the taxation where children, like the parents will have a child tax credit. Okay, so they get all that. Well, then now they take it off your disability. Oh, you're not now eligible for some of these credits that they give you. So here you go. Isn't that nice to have? Oh, we're taking that away. Yeah, you can't have that. Well, now they punish not just the disabled person. They punish a child for that.
Yeah.
What, you know, and it's wrong in society. I'll get Neil to kind of talk about some of the clawbacks, maybe with what you're up against, Neil. And I know you're very passionate about this topic. Yeah, definitely.
I'll try not to get mad and upset as I'm speaking, but I'll basically give you the Cole's Notes version.
It's a place that you be yourself, right?
Yeah, it's
There you go.
in 2013. Let me back up a little bit. My first wife that I had, she was in a wheelchair, and like I've got a disability as well. I've got cerebral palsy, so I get around on crutches. And my wife had she was in a wheelchair. It's a disability called arthrogryposis, and it's basically when the baby develops in the womb, if they don't have enough amniotic fluid, then your joints and bones don't develop enough, and so they get fused. And so her joints were fused when she was born. So she was in a electric wheelchair basically her whole life, and I was married to her for 10 years, and then we had a son. And about a year after my son was born, she developed kind of a weird, just a weird condition, and we weren't quite sure what it was. It was she just had lots of like swelling and pain in her body, and we weren't quite sure what it was. And so, but she had this thing for about 4 years, and she struggled with it. So imagine she's got a disability her whole life, and then she's got this new condition that we just weren't sure what it was. It ended up being lupus, and by the time it was properly diagnosed, she had a bad attack, and that attack basically attacked her liver and kidneys, and about a month and a half after, well, a little over a month maybe, she passed away in the hospital.
Sorry.
And anyway, so when she passed away, I received it's called a survivor's pension on her behalf. As her husband, I get a survivor's pension. And this survivor's pension, as soon as I got it, the provincial government here in BC turns around and says, "Well, isn't this wonderful that your wife passed away and you got all this money?" I mean, I'm being a little bit sarcastic here, but that's what it kind of looks like with a lens when you're looking at it from the outside. It looks like the government saying, "Well, isn't this wonderful that your wife passed away and you got all this extra money now? So now we can take extra money off of your disability check because you obviously don't need it now because you got all this extra bonus money. I mean, isn't this wonderful that your wife passed away? You got all this bonus money." And so they claw it back, and and it's just so bizarre to me because it's like, I've talked before about, there seems to be this idea that, again, not to pick on government or the higher ups or whatever, but there seems to be this idea that if you discriminate against, minority groups like people with disabilities or people that are on social assistance, if you discriminate against everybody equally, or if you treat everybody as badly, the same, like badly, that somehow that's not discrimination anymore, and that is just bananas to me. In fact, that's what the BC Human Rights Tribunal told me. I had a guy actually tell me, well, like to my face, he said, well, as long as the government is treating everybody the same, and clawing back the money the same, and treating everybody badly the same, and being prejudiced the same way, then it's not discrimination anymore. And that to me is just bananas, because I mean, you can look at history and say, well, did people are people saying the same thing about the Jewish Holocaust and and people of color when they had the the colored drinking fountains and they had you went to the back of the bus and all that kind of stuff. And of course you can look at it now and say, of course that's wrong. I mean, everybody says, of course that's wrong. Of course you can't do that because that's
segregation.
Yeah, and that was treating everybody the same though. You can say, well, everybody that was a Jew, they were all treated the same, and everybody that was black, they were all treated the same. And even you can say with women too, because remember, women didn't have the right to vote for many years.
Right.
It wasn't even until the 60s that they were allowed to vote, and so. We could say the same thing about women too. They could say, well, all women were treated the same. They all weren't allowed to vote, so that's fine, right? It's equal discrimination. Equal discrimination is not discrimination, and of course that's a bananas statement, right? But that is what the tribunal said to my face. They're still saying that, and they don't realize how bananas and bonkers that sounds. But it's just totally bonkers, and they believe it. They believe it. Like they bleed it and believe it, that as long as the discrimination is equal, as long as the discrimination is equally applied, it's no longer discrimination by you haven't got a case. And that to me is just crazy, crazy, crazy.
Well, Akil and David, what's your take on that regarding Neil's scenario that he's going through?
Well, for me, I think that's a little worse than us, and it goes to show you how, like, if we didn't know you guys, we wouldn't realize that all those things happened in Canada. We would have probably just think, okay, it's just a Caribbean problem.
Yeah.
But that is the reason why I say we all need to come together so the world could hear we all facing the same problem. We are discriminated against by the politicians, whether we like it or not. They are the ones who are the policy makers. We are not the policy makers. They make the decisions, and when we talk, nobody listens.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to do? It's years, people before me and before me is going on. When will it stop?
Mm-hmm. You know, and just to get back to a little bit my situation too, is like I've been fighting this for 10 years now, right? And I think a lot of people after maybe 1 or 2 years would just give up and say, well, you know, everybody just keeps saying no to me and slamming me in the door, slamming a door in my face and saying, go away, go away, go away. And it's been 10 years and I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yeah.
And again, that's why shows like Brent's show is so important, because there's so many people out there that voiceless minority of vulnerable people that just get frustrated and don't have no voice, either can't or won't advocate for themselves, or just aren't able to. They don't have the energy. They just give up. And so that's why it's so important you have a show like Brent and you know, and I feel like there's lots of times that I just feel useless, like I'm not even doing anything, you know, but I keep fighting, but it is frustrating because you just feel like you're not being heard, and it's just like you're just like throwing things in an echo chamber, and it just like nothing comes back to you, right?
Just kind of bounces off.
And it's just it's so frustrating. But I mean, I'm still fighting, there's so many people out there that, like I said, that can't for whatever reason or don't fight. So that's why shows like this are so important to really, you know, we advocate for people that can't or just don't have the energy to do it. And I think it's really important to continue that fight.
Oh, and let me just add to what he just said. Something he mentioned concerning, you know, persons who will go on with this for like 2 years and then give up, or whatever the case may be. You know, sometimes it mightn't just be that, but what will happen is, you know, some people get help and they depend on that and say, well, you know, I don't need to do this, or I don't. Right, sorry about that.
Right.
Yeah, so people who will have that, who will depend on other people to make that move for them, they will be like, well, okay, I am getting help. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. I'll just leave it alone, and it will be done for me. And you know, I think some of us need to, you know, get out of that behavior.
And you know, to add to that, something I always say: family support. There's a lot of disabled people who come from quote unquote a very profitable family, and then they're not going to stand up in no line with us to fight for the disabled rights, because they live in pretty, they get in everything they want.
Yeah.
So how do you fight against all of that. Sometimes we would organize certain things to go talk to the minister and stuff like that. And everybody would say yes. And on that day, it would only be if there's 2 or 3 of us there, that's the problem.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's part of it is that some people, I mean, they have their family that can take care of them, that can provide for them, and then there's other families that can't, right? And it's a systemic issue for sure. And it kind of goes back with having your freedoms of being able to, and I being so careful on that word freedom stuff, right? But it's having your autonomy, like autonomy of having, just everything that you need. And they shouldn't be saying, oh, well, because you're poor, no, you don't need that, because you need to listen to what we're telling you, what we feel is best for you. They're giving people their freedom of what is best for them, right? Lived experience of, and being, like you say, gentlemen, on your show, being yourself, right? And I love that. I love that phrase. And I channel it forward, because bringing all advocates together is not just in a one jurisdiction of the world, within Canada. This is a global issue, and in Trinidad, what you go through there, and it's not just there; it's everywhere, and and I'm proud to bring people together, and like Neil mentioned too, it's some people, they unfortunately maybe they're scared about advocating for themselves, or maybe they feel, or maybe I don't know, maybe their voice they think is not being heard. That's why we bring people all together from all different walks of talk about what they're going through, lived experience, what they can do is advocate going forward of trying to make change for the better, to better themselves, better the environment around, for other people, other citizens, with whatever country it is. I think that if everybody came together in one way or another that can advocate, I think we can make it a better society in general around the world. I mean, it can be done. It can. Mm-hmm. It's just bringing it's like a big army together, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not enough people in power that have disabilities. I mean, and again, maybe I shouldn't pick on somebody like Rick Hansen, because I know he avoids the limelight in a lot of ways for a reason. I mean, he has his reasons for kind of staying out of the political sphere, and that's fine. Again, I'm not trying to pick on him, but he's just he's a well-known figure in Canada here, but I'm just offering him up as a name to, like, can you imagine somebody, either Rick Hansen himself or somebody of his ilk, if somebody of his ilk came forward and said, enough is enough, this is BS, you politicians have to wake up and do something. Imagine if somebody like Rick Hansen came forward and said that, but nobody does. Nobody does.
They would be all over him, right? They'd be like, oh, because Rick Hansen said it.
Yeah, because he's got credibility, right? And so they'd be saying, well, if Rick Hansen says that we're abusing people with disability, we better do something about it, right? Yeah. It would have been done and over with like 30 or 40 years ago.
What's that old saying? You jump how high? How high?
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, I'm not. If people looking back at this, and maybe Rick Hansen himself is going to look back, and I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm not trying to pick on him. I'm just saying, again, I know why he avoids the limelight, and I know why he avoids the political sphere. But I'm just saying, can you imagine if somebody of his power and influence came forward and said, "This is BS. You guys got to do something about this." It would have been done and over with, like I said, decades ago, and we wouldn't even be here talking about it.
Totally, it comes down to either a political figure, person, or a person of power, or a person who, like you mentioned, a very strong advocate, And I highly respect Rick for everything that he is going through, and for all his advocacy. Totally. There's, and I'm glad, Rick, if you are watching this in the future, or you're watching it now, I'm glad that you're staying out of the spotlight like that, right? It's you're taking a step back, and you're doing your thing. When it comes to say there's celebrities, like I used to watch on those info commercials. You'd see a celebrity on there, Mr. Chan, or Jackie Chan. Chan.
Yeah.
He'd have this weight equipment. Oh, it's Jackie Chan. It must be really good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when it comes to say Rick Hansen, or I think there was an MLA that was actually in BC under the Liberal Party before. What's it? What was it? There was an MLA that was in there. She was in charge of the disability stuff.
Stillwell.
Stillwell. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's different people that they'll stand out. Like, there are different figures, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that if we get enough people around the world, people that will stand in certain areas, right, and we all kind of congregate in, we can make that change. We can. Mm-hmm. And nothing. And I want to make sure people that are watching this, I'm not saying that we're all here doing this. We're speaking all for you. Like, we're all coming together, and that's why I have High Energy FM, the CEO, I have on here, and I have Akil, with all lived experience. Like, we're all coming together for a common purpose to we bring awareness, ideas of how we advocate, what are the system breakdowns. We're not saying that we're going to solve all the solutions all for you, or we're speaking, definitely for you, because you can't speak for yourself.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, Brent, because we've actually been targeted, you and I both, online. Like, people have come forward and said, well, they've actually tagged us as kind of gatekeepers of the disability community, and I for sure am not a gatekeeper of the community,
no, me either.
and I know you aren't either. We had one guy, and more than one person, but came forward and said, can you and Brent control your people? It's like he came at me and you like we were in charge of some kind of union or something, some sort of union of disabled people, and I'm not that. I'm not a union leader of disabled people, and you're not a union leader of disabled people. Everybody has the ability to represent and speak for themselves. I'm just advocating because I can, and I do, and I'm hoping that what I do at some point does help somebody. And I know, as much little success as I have had, I did have some success back in 2015. I was able to reinstate a portion of my son's like a portion of my of the survivor's pension that belongs to my son. That was reinstated, and that was because of my fight, and it was because of Sam Sullivan, the ex-MLA Sam Sullivan. He stepped forward and he helped me, and so I was able to reinstate a little bit of money for myself, but not just for myself, because I was successful with that. I don't know how many other thousands of people it helped, but that was reinstated for, several other thousands of people in BC, because I had success with that. So even though I haven't been able to get my whole benefit reinstated, at least I got that one little portion of Jake's. And because of that success, however many thousands of other people in BC got the same benefit. So that's good.
Yeah, there's so many people that that are going through that, and that having so many of these clawbacks, and having an advocate like yourself. Fighting for change, that is a right that you're entitled to, and so many people that I've seen different posts on social media, people going through the same thing, and I tell them like, tune in, come on to the show. Like and anyone watching this, I would love you to come on to the show. And maybe when I down the road, I'll have High Energy FM and the CEO here and Akil. Like I'll have you come on too with other guests that I'll have on there too, and we can intertwine. And this would be great. We'll have a big party here, right? But what I mean is that it's bringing lived experience together and having people's voices being heard, and that's what it's about. And don't be scared about coming on and just your voice was heard, right? I mean, because we're all in this big paddle boat together recently, and I don't mean to throw any names out there of making a person feel uncomfortable at all, and this is not across any party lines, nonpartisan. But recently, we had an MLA in our political party in British Columbia, who, she stepped down. She's resigning, right? Because it's the system. The system is not listening to change that she wants to see happen.
And we should say that she's Aboriginal.
She's Aboriginal, and I stand behind her on that fully 100%. I've met her many times. She's a really great person. She'll say what's on her mind, Akil and David. Like she will. She's really outspoken. I met her when they were in opposition party before they became government, and we had a get together. And I tell you, she's a real go-getter. And she told me back then, Brent, I won't stop advocating. I will stand up and I will say what's on my mind. I said, I totally can understand that. She goes, oh no, you don't know me. I said, I will get to know you, and you're a great advocate. And since then, she has been advocating very strongly, and so she had all party support. I think she caught everybody off guard because she just stood up in the House, in the People's House, which is the legislature, and she basically gave a statement. And I'm not going to go in and mention about what she mentioned, but basically an overall view is that the system is broken. The system needs to be completely redone. So people, they need to listen to her. So, and that goes with other advocates. Like, I'm glad you mentioned that, Neil. Like, a lot of people, they don't know, like the story behind when people are in a position of maybe they're doing something to better to bring awareness to a cause, right? Or if it's a politician, or it's a journalist, right? There's a lot of journalists that do cover stories, or if you're doing podcasts, you're in a position, like what they call it, another position of power, or your position of enthusiasm, or maybe I don't have the right wording here, but you're another convincing people to listen, or bringing people together. So now you're in that position where they're going to attack you, right? So, and I knew that going into it, and I'm not stopping, right? So somebody wants to lunge at me again, they can keep trying, right? But it doesn't shut me down. I will keep advocating and standing up for what I believe is right for me and for other people that don't have that voice, or are scared to speak up, or they want people to speak for them, right? So there's so many variables of that puzzle, and some people say, "Oh yeah, you just put people on a pedestal," right? Remember that line? Put someone on a pedestal because I want to speak for them. Well, no, no. It's so.
I wanted to jump in here. Birdie again jumped in on text, and she said I shouldn't have used the word Aboriginal. I should have said Indigenous. So I'm actually using old definition, and she says I shouldn't have used that term. But yeah, to get back to your point, I mean,
yes,
there's been a lot of infighting amongst advocates. And
too much infighting.
And I do think that's bad. So like I said, on the one hand, you have people coming forward and saying, control your people, Brent, control your people, Neil, like we're some sort of union rep or something. Or the other side of the coin is, that there's just this idea that if you're not advocating in a certain way, exactly the way somebody wants you to advocate, then they'll just tear you down. You know,
Right.
So rather than everybody uniting and pulling on the same rope, like we're all wanting to get the same thing done, like we're all want to be, like I said, the big thing is autonomy, right? I mean, everybody wants autonomy for people with disabilities. Everybody wants that. And yet,
it's like war, right? As they all come together in different ways of coming to that. So
but instead of like uniting together and building this autonomy, they're so busy like tearing each other down and saying, well, if you're not going to advocate in this particular way, then you're not advocating, you know. And they'll discredit you and say, you know, you're not worth my time and energy because you're only saying this about, you know, you're only talking about whatever, like food banks or something, or, you know, you're not talking about the Canadian disability benefit 24/7, so you're not advocating, or you're not talking about the convention for people with disabilities 24/7, so you're not advocating. And I mean, that is just such a short-sighted viewpoint, you know.
Right. Exactly.
We're all trying our hardest. We're all pulling on the same rope, like I said. We're all trying to push the same rock up the hill.
We're all in that paddle boat, right? We're all,
and so why are we so busy tearing each other down and pushing each other over and saying, you know what, you don't matter, I'm going to push you over. You don't matter, I'm going to push you over. You know, and that doesn't work for me. And to say that I'm a gatekeeper, that you're a gatekeeper, and that we have to control our people like we're some sort of union rep either, too. That doesn't make sense to me either.
Garbage. Yeah, exactly. You know, I totally agree with you on that, Neil. Like, there's so much energy that's been wasted for people who they fight against other ones. Yeah, like, oh, you're not saying what I want you to say, or oh, why are you not doing Twitter? It needs to be on Twitter Space. No, like, we're doing it on here now, and this is better. You know, like we said before, and then it's the picture quality is perfect, the audio quality is perfect, and it's accessible to so many people. And having David and Akil joining us, I mean, this is like so wonderful because the audio quality is superb, and it's one click, right? I mean, that's all it took was one click, and that's a you're in, or one most click, right?
It's one click. Right? It's one click to connect Canada to Trinidad, just like that.
Yeah. And then done. And then they're here, you know.
Yeah.
And that is great.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, and you know, having you broadcasting our podcast on a regular basis, it's so wonderful. You know, one day I would love to try to you know, actually come right onto your show somehow. If you could, I don't know, you could have me live.
Sure. We work on that.
One of the things I was going to mention, I don't know did I mention it already, that that because Canada being Canada and the CRTC being a thing here, there's a lot of restrictions on what is broadcast here in Canada, and so for your show, for people that want to go to your website and listen to your show here in Canada, I did test it the other day, and we found out that we can listen to your show if you use, right now, Firefox seems to be a compatible browser that works, so that we're able to actually stream your show. If you're in Canada, we're able to stream your show from your website. The other browsers seem to be kind of flaky, and and also I know that there are other apps available that you can also supposedly get your show as well, but because again there's certain restrictions here in Canada, some of those apps are kind of locked out here in Canada and we can't use them. So one of the few ways that you can connect to your show is, like I said, directly on your website through the web browser, through Firefox. So anybody listening, just go to your website, the High Energy FM website. It's in the description of this video. You just click on their link and make sure you're using the Firefox browser, and you should be good to go.
And then you'll be able to listen to DJ Starrocks.
DJ Starrocks, yeah. We did have a question earlier from Birdie as well, and and she said she was wondering how you guys, Akil and David, how you guys first of all got in touch with us, and how you get in touch with other guests and advocates for your other shows that you broadcast on your radio.
That's a good question.
That's Akil. That's Akil, baby. I just told him we need to get programming pertaining to disability, and he did his magic.
Mm-hmm.
Akil.
Oh, he's got his audio turned off right. Oh, there you go. Oh.
So basically.
Yeah. Oh, you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah. How I found? I don't know. I was just, to be honest, I was just scrolling through Twitter. But all this, I end up finding this. Well,
I hear kids in the background, eh?
Yeah.
I've been there to done that already.
Yeah, it's all good. That's what makes the show.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
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 My son's 14 years old.
Did his research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And came up with it. He forwarded it to me to ask me if I would be okay with it. I had a list and I said, yeah, let's do it. It was just a case of finding the right time slot.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been doing it from then non-stop.
That's good. And again, for anybody listening, I mean, maybe you can do it, Brent, because you're the host. But you're the Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies show is broadcast every Wednesday on High Energy FM.
Yeah.
It's 9 a.m. Pacific.
Pacific.
And noon Eastern.
12 Eastern time. So it's High Energy FM. Tune into High Energy FM every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on the west coast of Canada and the U.S. all the way down to the southern tip of the USA. And that's in the Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So it's the East Coast in Canada, down the eastern seaboard of the USA, and tune into High Energy FM because that's the place to be yourself.
Should I also
everybody to be just be themselves?
Just be themselves. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I really do. Too.
Should I also mention that the two links that we usually share is Listen Online Radio website and the FEMA website, given the fact that our original website is down at the moment. So those are the two websites you can use. Okay,
well, I actually just linked your website just before the show, and I thought it was up, but is it down right now, your main website?
Yeah,
it's down right now.
Okay.
So you guys can use the two websites that we usually post. I think we usually post the Listen.
Well, after we're done with the show, just DM me the other link, and I'll put the other link in the description as well.
Yeah, if you could send it over to me too, that'd be good.
All right, no problem.
I'll just add it to the video when we're done, so that'd be good.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Listening to DJ Starrocks. I mean, the blend of music that you put in there. I like the variety of stuff that you put on there, and it really gets the energy just pumped, right? And it just gets that momentum to. And
it's interesting to see how differently produced your segments are too.
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
We try to cater to everybody.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's what
everybody have a different listening ear, so we try to cater not only to educate but give you a little something nice to listen to.
So are you going to broadcast your own segment here?
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
You're giving us a spot?
Yeah. No, that'd be great.
No, I'll send the audio after we're done again. Yeah. So as I've told Akil, it's like now that we have longer shows, like 2-hour shows. I told Akil, you guys can just edit it down however you want now.
Absolutely.
I'm just sending it out, and you guys can edit however you want.
Yep.
Oh yeah, exactly. There's so much that can be done with it. Yeah, it's and and also, gentlemen, like I want to reach out and say that recently we had Aaron Richmond join us on here too, which was wonderful. And that's so people, you're trying to figure, okay, well, who was Aaron Richmond, and how was he connected with High Energy FM? Maybe if you could let the listeners know that how all that came about.
Aaron Richmond, I think was the same thing I did for you as what I did with Aaron Richmond. As for, I think that was on Instagram though. We had link on Instagram. I think before that also, we had he had a show was to host also. And I think we ended up turning it down, not because we wanted to, but it was not up to the standard that we was looking for. And I think it was like about 3 or 4 years after, things started to shape up. And then I was like, we got in contact with each other, and that was it.
Yeah, it's always nice to connect with other fellow advocates who like to share their stories and lived experience and advocate in the best way that it works good for them and their community and around the country and around the world. I mean, bringing everybody together with all the same common themes, and it's wonderful. And stop all the clawbacks and make things accessible for everybody, and just make things so much better. It can be done. It can. It's just political will, right? That's all it is. We
just all need to be a Rick Hansen.
Yeah.
And again, not to pick on him, but it would help. It would help if there was more than one Rick Hansen in the world.
And I do these Breaking with Brent segments, David and Akil too. It's wonderful. I love doing those. I'll just kind of live on location, and something will catch my attention, and I'll just start getting recorded, right? And then I kind of throw a little bit of spice into it, right, and spice it up and make it a serious situation more as a comical at the same time. And even though it's hard sometimes to do it, but I try to put a little bit of humor into it too, right? Because life is so serious in so many ways, but you have to kind of turn it around and kind of look from the outside of it and look in and go, wow, it's messed up. But how can we make things better, right? Turn a negative into a positive, negative energy into a positive energy.
And that's an important thing to mention too, is that, I mean, nobody wants to hear advocates that are always bitching all the time. Yeah. And just being negative and saying, woe is me, woe is me, woe is me. I mean, you're quickly tuned out if you do that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to listen to that at all. So you have to strike a balance of, being that strong advocate and, saying that pointed comment, but also, balancing it off with a little bit of honey, as I've always said, like, attract them with a little bit of honey and and
the bees will come.
And the bees will come, and not just be negative, because nobody wants to, like if I was always slamming politicians and saying all politicians suck, I mean, how good would that be? Like we have Mike Maurice coming on the show tomorrow. I mean, if I was on the show saying Mike Maurice sucks, I mean, do you think Mike Maurice is going to want to come on the show?
Oh no,
of course not.
Oh right? No, exactly. And it's about understanding, who they are, and respecting their position, their approach on advocacy, and every person has their way of advocating, right?
Yeah.
And like there's things that I could even say, someone would say, well, Brent, you're not advocating in the way that I want you to advocate, because it doesn't work good for me. You need to advocate because this is what we need now. This is, well, yeah, I mean, it's something that needs to be brought forward, is that sure, there's things that would be great to have now, but there's things that maybe we can have that later, but we need to focus on what autonomy is now. And sure, there's steps to get there, and advocates, we all work together, like you mentioned earlier, Neil, and Akil and David. Is like there's the core, right? And then there's other parts that come to that, right? And other ways of advocating and bringing everybody together. And yeah, like you mentioned, it's like there's so much infighting. Oh, it's just, and it's, yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's some days where I'm going, but I mentally just go, okay, what can I do as an advocate, as a strong advocate? What can I do to try to make things better for people? When I see their posts on social media, reaching out for help, mutual aid, a lot of help out there, people crying for help. And all I see is people saying, oh, yeah, that advocate is terrible. That advocate's terrible. Oh, it's like, really?
Or that politician is terrible, or whatever.
Yeah, or that politician's terrible. Like, and that tells me that the system is a systemic issue and needs to be changed, right?
And I mean, one thing I was going to say was that, again, getting back to politicians and the people in power, it's not. I mean, politicians are just people. I mean, they're just trying to do their job that they were elected to do. I mean, they were elected by the people, by the public. So they're serving the public, doing their job. But like, I know, and I've been guilty of this. I mean, I've shared this story with you countless times. When I first met. Shane Simpson face to face, because he had that little public consultation, and he was just he met he arranged to have this kind of conference thing in Surrey, so I went to go see him, and he was just standing outside the door and just enjoying the weather, I guess. And I approached him and I said, you probably don't know who I am. I'm Neil Matheson. And he's like, yeah, I know who you are. And his face went white, because he knows that I'm just always like sending him like these kind of pointed, nasty emails, But and so I've been guilty of that, right? Like I've been maybe too harsh, because that's the thing is, I mean, you're so used to not being heard as a person with a disability. So I'm very passionate, and sometimes your passion turns to anger. But I mean, once I got that response from him, like, oh, I know who you are, and he started to walk away. I said, no, wait a minute. I just want to make clear that, I mean, that it's not you. I'm not attacking you, the person. I wanted to make clear it has nothing to do with you, the person. It has everything to do with the policy. I said, I'm not attacking you. I'm not attacking you, the person. I'm attacking the policy only. And once I said that, then he calmed down and we had a nice chat after. Yeah. But it's important to make that distinction, right? Because there's so many people that are out there going, this politician sucks, and then they're attacking. And I mean, like I said, I've been guilty of that myself, and I know I was guilty of that. But again, it's because I get so passionate and so caught up in not being heard, and there's so much negative emotion tied to that, and so sometimes that can get spilled over. But it's so important to make sure you make that distinction between politician, the person, and politician, the policy. Government policy. They're vastly different things, right? Vastly different things.
And I remember a time too. I'm glad you mentioned the former minister at that time. And I approached him several times at town hall meetings. And one part, that's why I'm such an advocate on the 375 issues, because there was we all got to ask Q&A, right? Q&As. So one question, one answer. And so I had the question was, Shane, are you going to raise the 375? He goes, I'd like to. I go, okay, but the answer again, I go, can I re-ask that? Are you going to raise the 375? Shelter. And there's that keyword again, shelter. He says, there's opportunity to do that. However, that was my question. Sonia asked a question. Are you going to tie it to inflation? No, we're not. No, we're not. And so if somebody else in the audience says, are you going to ask kind of the question I had asked? Are you going to raise that shelter so people can afford their housing? And at that time, housing was going no more than $1,000, Neil. And Akil and David, $1,000 at that time. And he said, there's no way. The government,
now it's doubled.
No way.
Doubled.
And he said, there's no way that the government's going to raise it from 375 up to 1,000. I thought, okay, so again, that's a policy decision. He said, if that was up to me, he would do differently. Now, fast forward, I had him on the show. There's things that he still can't talk about, and I understand that. Shane, if you're watching this, I understand that. I respect every politician based on their advocacy on what they try to accomplish. The system won't let them do it. There's other ones that maybe
the ghost in the machine. The ghost in the machine.
There are other politicians, unfortunately, and I'm not going to do favoritism and saying, hey, Brent was on quote. He said that. Saying different ones that are better than others. What I'm saying is, I think in their own heart, there's some of them that really do want to see change happen. There's other ones who let the system basically run it the way that they want it to run, right? They could do a little bit more ambition. However, I think that in general, we can, as society, we can wake them up and realize that, hey, like, we don't have to live in way back in 1500s, right? The way back in, so a lot of these policies were drawn way back when. I know I was talking on an open mic session, and I think I had a show, we were talking about how did all these policies and all this stuff stem, and I won't even go dive into it because people, it's a triggering thing, and so I won't do it. They say, well, it goes back to the anarchy, right? So, but I won't, I'll leave that alone because that kind of goes fast forward to just recently with the indigenous MLA who just recently is resigning effective in March, right? And that goes back again to the legislation, the policy. So again, it dates back around the world. This dates back all these policies. We need to chisel away and find out why are the policymakers why are they so bound of not wanting to make that change? Clawbacks.
Well, Dan makes a good point. He says one of the questions that should be asked of politicians is, what if this was your own family? What would be your response then? Right? Yeah,
that's a very, very good question. And maybe I'll get Akil and David maybe chime into Dan's question there. What's your take on Dan's question?
Can you repeat the question?
Well, Dan is saying that one of the questions that should be asked of politicians, because politicians often think, I think that the ones that just kind of stand pat and keep the
status quo.
It's status quo of the shelter allowance here, for example, $375 per month. The reason why they do that is that their rationale is, well, it doesn't affect me. It's no skin off my nose. So Dan's question is that one of the questions that should be asked of them is, well, what if this was your own family? What if this was your son or daughter or your wife? Would your response be different?
Definitely, but you see, the thing about it is a lot of those politicians, as we say, more care about themselves and their family. So, for them to say, well, all right, it have other people with families out there may need help or whatsoever. you know, they would know, not that the fact they don't know, they know that we need help. It's just that they hate to look at it and say, well, you know, to take that X amount of money to spend on us when they could take it to spend on themselves. So for us,
only that.
Go ahead, David.
Go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah. What a lot of politicians, not all do, even if they do have someone who is disabled, we're not going to know about it. The most you're going to hear is they post them to a different country. Outside of that, but we're not going to hear about it. So most of them will be, as they say, hidden away, out of the public view.
Right.
So even if you ask them that question, they will give you a ride all around and around and around and around. It will always come back to you.
That's a good way of putting that. I like that. You know, some people will say, well, I have one of my neighbors who asks these questions ever so often. And yeah, a couple of buildings down from where I live, same company that I rent from, but different property management. But they're at a bus stop, and you know, I tell them about the shows that I do, and I bring people together. And you know, one of the questions, exactly what we're talking about now, is, but Brent, who makes these decisions? Why can't they raise the rates? Why can't I just have enough to live? And I went, well, you know, there's the gatekeepers, there's the policymakers, and then there's the stakeholders. Okay, well, how do they all line up? I said, see, that's the thing, right? This is not just a provincial problem. And in the U.S., like, they have states, but in in Canada we have provinces, and you know, in different areas around.
And in the states they have lobbyists. You know, same thing, right? People lobby the government, and we have what you said, stakeholders, and that's kind of the $1 million question, right? That is what's driving the policy. It's the mystery. It's the mystery stakeholders that is kind of the machine that's driving everything, and saying, well, you have to answer to us first before you answer to the you know, the PWD advocates or whatever.
And here's a good one for the listeners too. So, and also my guests that are on, you know, just recently I rented in the market, they call it the market housing sector, right? I call it the market sector, and then the other sector is like government sector of housing, right? So you know, apples, oranges, I mean, but then there's the, you know, it gets confusing because, and one of the politicians actually explained this to me, because at one time I didn't really know. I was kind of confused. Well, there's the private sector and there's a public sector under government housing. Then under traditional private sector, which is owned by developers, right? There are private investors. Now that's public still housing. So there's two differentials, and it's hard to really break them down. But so when I explain to people about this, I just say private housing, like the market housing, or you want government housing, right? Now the difference is that under government housing, okay, which is they control under nonprofit, they're not-for-profit organizations, okay. But the difference is you get to pay subsidized housing. You get to pay less amount. And that's where that 375 kicks in again. That's the maximum threshold, and that's what they're basing it upon too. They're basing it upon the maximum threshold under subsidized housing too. Okay, so, and that's kind of like when your rent is geared to your income. So the higher the price in the market housing that I live in. So if I were to do my income right now based on rent geared to income, it would be $407.55 based on my current amount. So it's still over above that 375 threshold. But in subsidized housing, it'd be a lot less. You see what I'm saying? So again, it goes to autonomy, is that person should be able to live wherever they want to live. But the government says, well, we're going to build this kind of housing. Here you go. We'll build it. However, but what they're not telling the public is there's at least over 10 years waiting list to get into it. And also, even if they wanted to, should they have to choose that housing over the housing sector that they live in right now, where they could have maybe rent guaranteed income? There's a toss one, because I talked to my current management company here, and they said, they didn't give you a rent increase. You didn't get a rate increase last year, did you, Brent? I go, no. The government didn't give you a rent increase or an increase in your income, but we gave you a rent increase. I go, right. But we're going to give you another rent increase this year. I go, yeah. So I did. I got one. Doesn't take effect for 3 months, just over 3 months. I said, well, there'll be something in the budget. Don't get too excited about that, because you got nothing last year. So what makes you think that you're going to get something this year? Because they didn't give you nothing last year. I go, but they gave us the year before, they gave us $300, but they clawed it back. And we fought and we advocated strong. I had NewsHour right on scene. So tell me, Brent, how does this feel, having $300 taken away? How does it affect your life? I go, well, I'm going to have to move if I don't get it back. And so guess what happened? I had to move from where I grew up to where I am now. But they gave back 175. But I had to make that decision at the time that was based on what I could afford. So now I'm in a situation where I'm in the housing where I'm further away from grocery stores, not accessible. I mean, I live in an okay neighborhood. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not accessible for me, and it's expensive. So now if I want to go back to the community, David and Akil, if I want to go back to the community that I moved from, now I need to find cheaper housing, apparently, for them to actually pay for the moving cost. Cheaper, and it needs to be substantially cheaper. Yeah. They moved me from where I lived to here because it was substantially cheaper.
And you were closer to me too.
And I was closer to Neil. We were paying $1,775, and we found a place for $1,365. So of course the government's saying, oh yeah, for sure, substantially cheaper, we'll pay for it. Now I want to go back. That same place now is actually over $2,000. So again, we need to fix the system. Like, a person should be able to say, hey, I want to move wherever, we'll pay for the moving cost, no problem. So that's another thing.
Well, one of the things we haven't even touched on, and I know it's like super controversial, so maybe we won't even talk about it that much, but I was going to say MAiD is a huge issue now.
Yeah,
I don't know if Akil and David are even aware of what MAiD is. You can talk to that, Brent.
Yeah. I mean, MAiD is not. Some people say, well, MAiD, when it first came out, I said, well, what is that? Is that a person who comes and cleans your home or something, like a MAiD? And they're like, and I know I got my hand slapped on that one day. I said on my show, and someone said, oh, how dare you, Brent, say that? And I said, I don't know. Like, honestly, what is it? Like, I didn't know what that was, and shame on me but at the time. But I didn't really know, because I thought, well, why is this even an issue to talk about? Someone said, well, because it's a law that's going to get passed in Canada. I go, a law for what? I said, if you have a terminal illness, and I'm going to talk about it here. So in Canada, if a person, the law is they're trying to put it in so that person can actually go, if they are not near death, right? They can go and
if death isn't foreseeable, they put that clause in.
Yeah. If death is not foreseeable due to their circumstances, then they can go and apply and get a physician to sign off. My understanding is that you need to get 2 physicians to sign off on it. But I could be wrong, but that's what I've been told.
And it's assisted suicide, basically.
It is, and if you're not given the proper financial resources and also the adaptive devices that help to better your health, to better your well-being. So if you live in a situation where it's a lot of cosmetic things going on, you've got laundry, and it affects your health, that might be an issue. right? That could be part of it too. Like, so it comes down to the government not giving the people the proper resources and the services that they need. So because of that, it actually deplenishes their health down. So now they're in a state where now they're chronically ill. So now the government says, "Oh, I'm sorry that you're going through that, but you can go and apply for it." And that's why a lot of advocates were actually really against that. I'm not a pro, and so someone will say, "Brent, you misinterpreted this and that." So if I did, I apologize. I'm going to say that out there right now. I apologize if I triggered anyone by saying this. But I'm telling you that the system doesn't have to be this way. If a person chooses that because they've been their disability is beyond their control, their chronic pain, they're suffering so bad, nothing helps them with medication. I understand that, right? I get it. Fine, like that, whatever works good for you as an individual or as society looks at it. But if it's imposed on you because the governments in Canada refuse to give you your proper supports, your proper financial means that you need, that you have a right to. Okay, and I want to make sure to clarify this. You do have a right to proper financial support. The government has a responsibility to take care of its citizens. They're supposed to take care of seniors, but unfortunately, look at the veterans. They're not even taking care of veterans properly either.
I mean, you have veterans that fought in wars to protect our freedoms, and they say, "Thanks for defending our freedoms. Now you deserve to live in poverty," which is just crazy. They're living in tent cities, but they're suffering. So now the government says, "Well, hey, you can go and go and apply for it because we're not going to take care of you, but we'll take care of ourselves." So I guess my point is that MAiD should be, if you have a terminal illness, and I can touch on this issue is, and this is a personal thing that really brings home to me. My mother. Okay, and this is it gets complicated. One day I'll explain this on a show. But I had two mothers. I was adopted. Okay, I lost my one mom. So, and I always called her mom. I got to know who my mother was, right? So I was really close to both of them. But I always said my mom was my mom because that's what I thought it was. But anyway, I lost my mother in 2015, right? My mother, I lost her she passed away due to cancer. Now she had a terminal illness. So she went through a procedure, and it really the family never really talked about it. And I learned heard a little bit about MAiD at that time, but they said she was induced into a coma, right? So So anyway, I understand the concept about MAiD, right? So she at the time she had the finances though, right? So she was okay, she was financially taken care of, but her illness, that's why she went that way. So my point is that if you don't have the resources and it's because of that, because the government neglects to deal with it, then there's a problem. And so I wanted Akil and David to hear. Well, and now I just want to make the point. Now they've opened it up so that if you're youth now,
I heard about that.
They've just opened it up that if you're a youth now, you can apply, and you don't even need to have parental. You don't even have to have parental approval. You can just go and do it.
Yeah. So it's I was saying that one day, if your kid's having a bad day, really having a bad day, they could technically go and apply, and saying that parents made me go in my room and they're emotionally, mentally not doing well, they could logically make a decision for themselves at that time and apply for it. I know one of our advocates.
I'm very to me, all human life is sacred. I don't care who you are, right? And we're all on this planet for a reason.
Yes.
And I don't think any of us gets to clock out until we're supposed to clock out. You know what I mean? And
Right.
So I think when politicians and doctors get in the way and say, I'm going to play God now, and I'm going to assign your worth and say you're not worth being financially supported. So instead, we're going to offer you medically assisted suicide because you don't have worth to me. You know, that's bad, because I mean, like I said, all human life should be sacred, and I really think, I mean, maybe that's going to touch a lot of nerves with a lot of people, and if I do, then I apologize, but you know, I just don't think that you know, that we should have none of us should have the ability to just to say that we get to clock out when we want, right? Because there should be higher powers at play to say, you know what, you matter, and you're on this earth for a reason, and you're going to stick around until it's your time to go, right? And so if you have doctors and politicians stepping in and saying, you know what, I'm going to play God instead, and I'm going to assign your worth and decide that you're not worthy and that you deserve assisted suicide, that's bad to me. I mean, that's just wrong. You know?
A person should be able to live the life the healthiest that they can, as long as the powers to be that will make that decision, right? And I agree that if a person is not well, no fault of their own, or just because of their condition, then I guess it's a different circumstance. But I mean, my belief is kind of how you see it, Neo. Is I believe that people are brought on this earth for a reason. They have a purpose. Like, their purpose is who knows what, right? I mean, only God really knows that who's. And I'm not going to get all religious, but we're here for a reason. And everyone has the reasons why things are happening for whatever reasons, et cetera. But it comes down to if it's just not given the proper financial resources or the resources to better them, their well-being, their health. Be able to freely go to where they want to go and not really worry. But these policymakers are making it so awkward around the world for so many people. Like, you're looking at, and I'm not, I know it's a touchy topic, but I mean, look at what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Russia right now. I mean, really, like there's so many, and people are fighting. And then I just saw there was somebody that posted just the other day, putting a flag up on Twitter. Oh, but if you're not a blue subscriber, we're going to you're going to terminate your account. And one of our fellow advocates who fights and sent that to me and said, Brent, please. So I reached out to her.
Just because she put a flag of Ukraine on.
Yeah. And they threatened her, and they said, we're going to shut you down if you don't remove it. Like, wow. Like, I wonder, she, put a bunch of flags up there. Oh, Brent, we're going to terminate you off. I'd be like, wow. So maybe a PWD can't afford to pay for that blue subscription? Like, fundamentally, there's a problem. Like, and that is a systemic. That's like saying, you do it this way, or we're gonna do this to you. Like, or you speak up, or shut you down. Like, and I thought, wow, that's messed up. And I keep thinking back of different advocates of, they come out. I remember there was one saying, oh no, you can't say that. Don't say that on your show. No, the narrative, right? And since then we've had so many wonderful guests, and having Akil and David joining me today. This is just so amazing having, wow, from Trinidad all the way, High Energy FM joining me on my show is such a privilege of having two other amazing advocates that want to see change too. And
it's a small world sometimes, right?
It is, and and they want to see change happen too, and they play some amazing music to brighten people's days, and based on maybe different moods of different generations of what people want to hear. And I love the oldies. I love that oldies theme that you guys do too. I click into that.
Can we pretend that you're gonna spin some records, Akil, and you can give us some of your DJ spin of records?
Here's some of this. Yeah.
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, I love it.
I love how much you were just staying quiet.
That's how Akil sounds when he makes his announcement.
Yeah. Coming to you from High Energy FM.
Big, he's doing most of our production.
That's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, but yeah, it's good if you when you do your announcement, say you say DJ Starrocks.
Yeah, we had fun doing that little didn't do that little ad the other day. It was fun. we always try to have fun with the channel.
Yeah,
trying to make people laugh. It's important.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always
a privilege that have us today to share what's going on in the Caribbean and in Trinidad Tobago. I mean, that's a part of what we all want to accomplish, to bring people together all over the world.
Like right now, like I can tell you, like the housing across the country here, they have there's three top cities that have made the top mark of most unaffordable. Now there's tons of other ones. So they got Vancouver, then came Toronto, which is in Ontario. So when I say Vancouver, it's in British Columbia, Canada, Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And then we got Victoria, BC, Canada, where I live. They say those are the three top spots, the most unaffordable. Now those are just based on a average. They call it average median rent. Now I find those stats so misleading when they say average median rent, because they say $1,699 in Victoria for a one bedroom. Really? Wow, I could argue that point, because a lot of them are over $2,000 in Victoria. I mean, building that we live in here, I mean, you got a two bedroom going for $2,000 now, right? So this, so the prices are like so outrageous. And again, the disabled would get $375. Then one of my advocates said that I always just banter back and forth. I mean, when you live in market housing, right, you use your whole check, right? You pay your whole check. So $1,358.50. If you opt out of a bus pass, so now you get an extra $52. You get $1,410. So now you got no transportation, but hey, you got more money to give to your landlord, right? But still, that whole check, you can't even rent anywhere. You literally. So then they say, well, why is there a housing crisis? Why are the people in tents? I mean, my gosh, all you have to do is extend that housing over to the market housing and get people housed. There's the different variations. I don't think some people say, well, that's a bad solution. Well, there's rent geared to income. There's rent control. There's some advocates calling for rent control, which then puts a cap on top of how much landlords can get when a current tenant moves out and the other one moves in. Now they make more money. If you do a rent control, they can't make that. So we pay $1,385 here right now. Okay, so when we got a rent increase, so it's going to go up to $1,412.70. They didn't round it down, no, right to the penny, because that's what they can get, right? So imagine that, a whole check. You can't even rent here for that. There's a problem, like, and so I look at, like, they call it co-op housing. They got different kind of housing, subsidized housing, market housing, new built ones. But here's the situation, David and Akil and Neil, is a lot of the new builds, the construction costs, water, sewage, municipal fees, building material, if there's delays in getting it going, for whatever reason, around the world globally, right? They're getting supplies in. All these costs get added on to the cost of them building new builds. So, the owners, the developers, they want to make money, right? Obviously, I mean, they're in business to make money. But if you keep the cost down and they work with the government to somehow keep the municipal costs down, they can actually get more housing built faster and more affordable. Because the cities claim that when they say affordable, well, who's it affordable to? Somebody making $500,000 a year may be affordable to them. But then there's below market housing. But again, people should have enough money to make that decision where they want to live and have enough to provide for it.
Autonomy.
There's
that word again.
Yeah, there's that magic word, autonomy. Yeah. I'll have to use that and put it on the top, autonomy.
A good place to be yourself for autonomy.
Yeah, and I know that Akil, you guys, you and David, you touched on about housing. I know you mentioned, Akil, I think it was you, Akil, that mentioned $1,500 for housing, which, I mean, that's pretty high for even your area too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that Dave?
No, I'm saying that how housing in terms of rent and stuff like that, sometimes it's out of our pocket.
Very much so.
Because if we start to pay our rent, then that's all we do. We have no money, nothing else.
Yeah.
At least we ain't even started to talk mortgage yet, even self. So.
Which is a different story.
Yeah, there's so many different stories when it comes to the high cost of rent. I mean, by the time that the person pays the rent, they have nothing left or very limited amount left. And that again, that tells me that if rent is all geared on that, there's a huge problem where people should have enough overall for all your amenities, everything that you need. Then you ask a politician that, they're going to say, oh, well, no, we're doing okay. But when they start seeing that the inflation is so high, I've noticed that now they're starting to feel the pinch. Well, if they're feeling a little pinch and they're making a lot of money, so they wonder what the poor or the disabled people or the ones that are working poor. I mean, there's a lot of people working a minimum wage that are struggling. They're working at 3-4 jobs and they still can't even barely afford either the rent or the cost of living. And then, they have to hope that they don't get sick and lose one of their jobs. Now they can't even afford to live where in the community that they're living. They got to move or trying to figure out how to move. They sell everything, move to somewhere else. Now they can't even afford to buy anything. So now they're homeless because.
Well, one thing I was going to say, Brent, is another thing that isn't talked about a lot, and I'm sure it's the same in Trinidad as well, is this whole idea of unpaid labor and caregivers that are like, whether it be family, like other family members that are taking care of a disabled family member. So you have caregivers that are doing that aren't doing it for money. They're just a family caregiver that's supporting somebody with a disability or otherwise.
Yeah.
And that puts a lot of strain on families and family dynamics and family relationships. And there's all this kind of unpaid labor that the governments of today and yesterday and yesteryear all depend on. Like they just assume that it's just going to carry on as it always has been. But that's a dangerous and very slippery slope, because like it gets back to the whole autonomy thing. Like the reason why money is important is because money is what affords you the autonomy. Because as a person with a disability, I don't want to have somebody be responsible for, like, I don't want to feel like a burden to somebody, right? Like we all like, I'm sure a lot of us already feel like we're a burden in some way, shape, or form, and to put that, like, I know, I know government can make you feel that sometimes that they're giving you this gift. They're giving you this gift of social assistant check every month, and you should be grateful, kind of thing.
Yeah, droplets on you. There
and so you kind of feel that burden, that kind of pressure and burden. But I don't think it's fair to kind of push that on to families and to, I mean, it kind of wrecks the whole family dynamic of, I mean, it's a lot of pressure on families and a lot of responsibility. And again, it's all this unpaid labor, and it's just kind of this understood thing from government. It's like, of course, it's just going to carry on as it always has been. And it's kind of this unhealthy thing. Like, again, we talk about people being trapped in marriages. Like, for example, people with a person with disability can't afford to leave a marriage, because once they leave the marriage, then they're going to be out on the street.
Yeah, they don't have the income or the stability, right? And it's like,
and again, that's all autonomy. That all comes back to autonomy, not giving somebody that freedom to be that person that they're supposed to be, like the motto of high energy, like, be the person you want to be that autonomous person that you're supposed to be, have the power. And we're not given the power because we're not given the finances. And because we're not given the finances, we don't have the autonomy. It all goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah, and people are trapped either in abusive relationships, or they're lived in a deplorable housing conditions, and they're scared to move, because if they move somewhere, well, it could be a worse situation, or they can't afford, like you mentioned, or they can't afford to move somewhere because now, they leave an abusive relationship. Maybe somebody's, they could be hitting them all the time, or they're mentally abusing them, like, nonstop. Like, it's I had a neighbor one time, this is going back many years ago, and wow, like, the guy, he had his son living with him, but he needed his son there. He had to have a son, but his son would be mentally tormenting him and physically abusing him, and he couldn't leave it. He couldn't leave because he needed his income. That's wrong. Like, and so autonomy, like, again, I mean, people should be given enough, what they need in order to maybe change that situation and make things better. And again, just to kind of quickly touch on the topic of people reaching out for mutual aid, for help. I mean, the government, they should be taking care of its citizens and not putting the burden on either family or strangers, or like people that are maybe acquaintances, to have to take care of society, because the system it's letting them down. I mean, you got families that were making very good income, and now they're going to food banks. Yeah. There's a problem there, like, and then the government says, well, these non-charitable organizations, aren't they doing wonderful things? These food banks, isn't this great? Well, why? Why is it great? Why is it great? So some of these big CEOs in these food banks are making billions of dollars off the backs of who?
Yeah, a thriving food bank means the government's not doing their job.
Exactly.
And I was going to say that, like, we have a fairly new premier here in BC, David Eby.
Right.
And, I was honestly going to say, it would be nice to hear him say the high energy FM motto, British Columbia, a good place to be yourself. Wouldn't that be awesome to have a premier stand up and say that, like, British Columbia, a good place to be yourself? I mean, that would be so refreshing, right? But they don't say that, and that's too bad.
It is, and I mean, that can be changed for sure.
Yeah.
We'll have Akil say that. It's.
Yeah, I think maybe David Eby should hire Akil.
Yeah,
And you could do the voiceover. British Columbia, a good place to be yourself.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's and that's the funny thing is I like to intertwine my guests with and making things as a put some humor into it, put some and because it's all about being yourself, right? It's all about bringing people together and for a common purpose and just about lived experience and just be who you are, be real. That's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're almost up to the hour here.
Yeah.
Do we have any other comments from either the chat or from Akil or from David? Any closing comments before we wrap up?
Just basically, we thank you for giving us this opportunity to be a part of your program. You guys being a part of our program, and I hope that this is a beginning of things to come. For all those who are listening, let us know what you think. Let us work together and we could bring that change, because if you help one person, you help the world to smile.
Yeah.
So don't think about helping 100 people now, but try to help that one person, and that's the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a domino effect, right? Because you help that one, that person's now going to help somebody else, and then it's like a whole chain, right?
I don't know why, but I suddenly have this song in my head, the Neil Diamond song. Hands, touching hands, reaching out, touching me, touching you. Right? We all got to have hands reaching out and touching each other.
Exactly.
Giving each other a big group hug.
And
saying we can do this. We can do this.
And I reach my hand out and I say thank you, Akil. Thank you, David. See, I just reach my hand out and say thank you for coming.
Yeah, no, it was a great show, you guys.
Maybe technology eventually, right? Like virtual, you put your hand there and you'll see it and go. It's like, oh,
sure.
Yeah. So, do you have any closing comments, Brent?
I do. I want to thank. Akil for coming on. That's DJ Starrocks.
DJ Starrocks.
DJ Starrocks. Thank you for coming on. It's a great pleasure for having you coming on here and just being yourself and talking about what's going on in Trinidad and the CEO David from the High Energy FM. This is awesome having you also join with Akil coming on and talking about the important issues that are going on in Trinidad and both of you for touching base on what's going on in not just Trinidad but around the world of how housing has affected people, all the inequalities, food stamps, like when you talk about food stamp, like a food card, and they just load it up there and what they get on disability versus that. Like, again, it's a systemic issue and needs to be changed. And us advocates work together and bringing the awareness and thank you for putting our podcast onto your show and maybe eventually we can we'll intertwine and we'll come back and forth. And I want to have you come back on here again. We'll reach out to you in the very, very near future. I always do that.
Sure.
Several times I have them on. So
it's great. It's great that you guys could come on.
Our DMs are open, so you guys can message us at any given time.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and one day I'll be live on your show.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, let me know when you want that. We'll get that going.
Yeah. We'll let you know.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
We'll have Neil and I join you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you so much.
we're gonna punch out now, okay?
Yeah.
We'll cue the music.
Cue the music. All right. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. And again, Akil and David, thank you very, very much for doing this. And definitely gonna be doing this again in the near future with you both. And we'll keep on trucking away, right? Advocacy, it never stops. It doesn't take a break, and either does being yourself or just